Hello, hello. Thank you for coming and checking out my channel. My name is Jennifer and this is Jen the Bookworm. And if you are new here, welcome. I appreciate you coming to check me out. And if you are a repeat offender, I appreciate you very much. So today I'm just bringing you a hopefully short video. I say hopefully because sometimes I intend for them to be short and then they're 30 minutes long. But I wanted to just check in, mid-month check-in. Almost a mid-month freakout, almost, but not quite. And it's almost a freakout because there's a book that I really need to get read and it's not happening. So that's kind of unfortunate. It's causing me a little bit of stress, which is silly because this is a hobby. It should not be causing me stress, but I guess it does a little bit. As I told the people I live with, a hobby is not a hobby unless you put extraneous, pressures on it and make it a stressful thing and want to tear your hair out. That's what a hobby is, right? So far this month, I have read a number of books. I mean, this is a short month, and I've seen a lot of other booktubers talk about it's a short month. I have a small amount of things on my TBR. I'm not expecting too much out of myself. It's February, but I don't know. I didn't feel that way. I didn't really consider the amount of time in the month when I set out my TBR. I may regret that. So, but I have already read like 3.5 books for this month. And I say a half because I did finish, the first thing I did was finish the Small Favor by Jim Butcher, which is Dresden Files book number 10. And I had it was a 2-day read, but I started it on the 31st of January and I finished it on the 1st or like really early on the 2nd day of February. So I count that as a half because I did finish it in February, but I started it in January. So I read that. I really enjoyed it. I'm continuing to enjoy the Dresden Files, continuing to love the way the world is opening up and how things are becoming more epic. Small Favor, it was a really good read. I enjoyed it. However, I feel like it was not quite as memorable as some of the other books that I've read in this series. Like, I'm really struggling to remember exactly what it was about. I just remember I enjoyed it. I just remember I had fun reading it. So take that as you will. I'm going to continue on in the series. I still really love them. After that, I read The Legend of Blackjack by A.R. Witham, and I read this as part of the Keymark readathon. It was the last book I read in the readathon, and I got that done right at the last minute. I got that done on the 6th of February, which is when the last day you could be reading for. So, but it was a great book. It was a wild ride. It's a kind of a YA portal fantasy, YA or maybe middle grade. I've heard it described as both. The character was sort of in the middle of both of those age groups. So I thought it was a great book. I thought it was a great adventure. It was kind of a non-stop adventure. There wasn't a lot of lulls. There wasn't a lot of just sitting around exploring the other characters or whatnot. It was pretty go, go, go from the beginning, which I kind of appreciated. It was very quick read. It was very smooth read. And the author did his own audiobook and did a great job at that. I think I'll be putting out a review of the book, a little more in-depth review of the book here soon as well. The next book that I read was called The House Witch by Delmhawk. Delmhawk. Delemhach. It's hard for me to pronounce. Delmhawk, I think is how it's pronounced. Anyway, this book was, I thought, a really good book. Now, I've seen it described as, it felt fan fiction-y. I've seen it described as, it's kind of a romantic fantasy book, but the romance part was kind of, but the book in general was great. I really enjoyed it. I've seen some good reviews and some not as good reviews for it, but I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was a cozy fantasy. I felt very similar as to when I was reading Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I really enjoyed the laid back laxness of the book. The character is kind of grumpy. Well, he was described to me as grumpy. I wouldn't say he was grumpy. I would say um, he doesn't have time for politeness. I don't know. It's so he's a house witch, and this world is a world where there's two kinds of magic coming from the same source, and there's the feminine side of the magic, and there's the masculine side of the magic. The masculine side creates mages, the feminine side creates witches. If you're a boy or you're a girl, whatever, you're still called a witch. And the witches are more like elementalists. They, fire, water, air, so on. Earth. Fire, water, air, so on. Like, there's only 4 things to mention. Anyway, and the mages, they don't really describe as in-depth what the mages do, but I gather it's different or more. It comes from a different place. It's something. They don't really like each other that much, and our point of view is from the point of view of a witch, so the mages that we saw in the book were kind of annoying and pompous and self-righteous and such. But I think that was somewhat point of view. But the world, witches used to be persecuted, and it was only like 50 years ago when they stopped hunting down and persecuting witches, and they started training them and regulating them. So he doesn't really like people to know he's a witch. So he tries to hide that he is, just because, you never know what you're going to run into. Also, he makes a really good point. And one of the things he says often in the book, which I thought was kind of cool because this is true, but not necessarily mentioned, is that because he has magic, anybody who gets to know him kind of assumes that he doesn't have a limit on his powers. That if he has magic, then he can do anything. Like, if somebody gets hurt, he can heal them. Or if somebody is dying, he can bring them back to life. Or whatever. His magic is very specific kind of magic, and it can't do all things. And so he doesn't like disappointing people. He doesn't like people turning to him at the last minute saying, magically save me, when he doesn't have the ability to always do that. So I thought that was great about the character. The specific kind of magic that he can do is he can do cooking and cleaning and protection of house and hearth, kind of house and home kind of thing. He can expel someone from his home if they're causing a trouble. He can sense when somebody in his home is having trouble, and he uses his powers most often for cooking and somewhat for cleaning. He runs the kitchen at the castle of the king, the kingdom that he lives in. And there is a bigger picture to the story. This is the first in a trilogy, and there is like war brewing in the background, but it is kind of a background story because the story is mainly about him. And he's not really a part of the war, so the war is just kind of background noise that's going on right now. I really enjoyed the book. I really enjoyed him. I enjoyed the humor in the book. There were lots of times when I laughed out loud. Some of the humor is a little juvenile, and some of the humor is very smart. So I really enjoyed it. And I look forward to reading the next one. What I didn't like about it is it's supposed to be a romance, and I'm not 100% sold on the person he falls in love with. I'm not 100% sold on that character. I almost wish they had left out the romance part of it and just made it about him. But either way, I really liked it, and I'll continue on with the series eventually. The next book that I read, and actually I think I read this one before The House Witch, but I read a book called All roads lead here. Rhodes being spelled Rhodes. It's the last name of one of the characters in the book. It is a romance book written by Mariana Zapata. And I read it because it's February, it's Valentine's month, it's the month of romance and hearts and roses and whatever. So I decided to try to fit a romance or two in. And I'm really, really glad I did. I was not sure how well I was going to jive with this, because romance is a genre I used to read quite a lot, because that's what I was exposed to and had at the ready. But now as an adult, when I can read anything that I want to, I tend to gravitate more towards fantasy and horror. And less towards romance. I like a good romance, but finding a good romance seems to be difficult. I'm sorry, it just does. Some of the romances that have been put out there that I've been exposed to lately have been like barely disguised fan fictions with the serial numbers rubbed off kind of thing, or just I'm no offense to anyone who likes this author, but Colleen Hoover kind of stuff where it's all very problematic and I'm just not sure. Or the stuff that I used to love when I was a high schooler and I was reading romance, but they're all kind of bodice rippers where the hero has to commit sexual assault against the heroine in order for her to fall in love with him kind of stuff, right? So I'm just not into romance as a genre as much, just because some of those things are very problematic. But this book, it was so good and it was wholesome. And I am not a prude. I like a good smutty book every so often, reach for one every so often because I want to read some good smut or whatever. But sometimes when you want to read a romance, it feels like that's not the same thing as I want to read a string of sex scenes that have very little substance in between them. So this one, it was a wholesome book. It was a book about a woman who she lost her mother at a young age, 13, and her mother went on a hike and never came back. And there were some rumors that maybe she just left, and there were other rumors that she died on this hike in Colorado, and so the main character, she was moved to Florida to live with her aunt and uncle, and she had a kind of not an abusive relationship, but kind of an emotionally taxing, maybe emotionally abusive relationship for a long, long time that she just got out of. And so she's kind of going back to what she considers to be home, which is where she lived with her mom. And she's kind of going back home, and her whole goal is to reconnect with her mom by going on some of the hikes that her mom used to go on and keep a journal about, and just, reliving, trying to get experiences with the people that she used to live around and the place she used to live around, and her mom and stuff. So she rents short-term this apartment above a garage, and she goes to check in and everything's hunky-dory, and then her landlord accuses her of breaking in and doesn't seem to know what's going on. And as it turns out, her landlord's son rented the apartment out without his father knowing, thinking his father wasn't going to be home for the month. He's a game warden. He was going to be gone for a month. And so he was doing it behind his back. And so the main character, Rhodes, he's grumpy. He is no nonsense grumpy guy. He is stern. He makes it very clear, we're not friends. I'm not trying to be friends with you. I don't want you here in my home, in my living space, near my kid. I don't even know you. But she's already paid. She offers to pay more. There's no place else to live. And she, at that point, for a short term, and she doesn't want to get a long-term housing because she's not sure she's staying. So she convinces him finally to let her stay, and then the relationship sort of builds from there. And it was a really great, wholesome book. It wasn't a book about, I didn't want you here, but now that you're here, let's have sex all the time. And we'll get to know each other some other time. It didn't work like that in this story, and I liked it. I appreciated that. It wasn't prudish, but it was wholesome. And I appreciated the fact that the story was about the interpersonal communication, the interpersonal relationship between her and Rhodes, between her and his kid, and between her and her old best friend that she's reconnecting with, and her trying to find her place in this world, and how having new interpersonal relationships with like Rhodes and stuff, how that affects all that. It was really good, and I really enjoyed it. It was a very quick read, but at the end I really felt like uplifted, and I really liked it. I cried, I laughed, and I thought it was really, really good. So if you're looking for a romance but you're not looking for a smut fest, if you're looking for something that's wholesome but not boring at all, if you're looking for a good character-driven story, has some stakes, but it's not like stupidly high or stupidly low. It's not terribly tropey, and the tropes that are in there are done pretty well, I think. Then I recommend All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. So those are the books that I've read so far. So I have a few more books on my list that I wanted to get done in February. Namely, The Clash of Kings by George R. R. Martin. This is the second book in A Song of Ice and Fire, and I was supposed to have read it already. It just hasn't happened, and I think part of it is because I'm so dependent on audiobooks. It's really, really difficult for me to make time for a book that I have to read physically, and things have been happening, and my daughter got sick, and now my boyfriend's sick, and the sickness coming. I'm probably going to be sick here soon, but I am going to really. I've started it, but I hadn't gotten very far into it, and so I really need to get into doing that. That's today's goal. I also have on my list The Poison Song by Jen Williams, and this is the third book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy to finish up this series, and I hope to get to that, although I'm not going to push it. If I don't get to it, then I don't get to it, because I already feel like I've read quite a good amount of books, so if I have to push this off to March, then I will. Also, I picked out City of Thorns by C.N. Crawford, which was supposed to be kind of like a paranormal romance. I picked it out for February as well, and I haven't gotten to it, and I might not get to it. It really just depends on how much time it takes me to read Clash of Kings, which is a much higher priority, so we'll see. Also, this coming weekend, provided my boyfriend's not feeling so terrible he doesn't go, he's taking off on Friday to an event that he does reenactment events, and so he's taking off on Friday to do that, and he's going to be gone all weekend, and I was hoping to revive Read It or Delete It for that weekend. So I was hoping to do a vlog, pick out some books from the big salad bowl of books that I have there. I added new books to the mix because I keep buying books, so I added new books to the mix, and I'm gonna choose from there and see how many of those books, how many I find that I want to read, and how many that I need to delete just to get it out off my Kindle and out of my site so that it stops clogging everything up. So that is the goal for this month, to finish reading those books and to do a weekend of Read It or Delete It. If I find a book from Read It or Delete It that I like and I'm going to read it, it may throw off the TBR a bit, because it might take longer than this weekend to read it. So we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. So that is the mid-month check-in. Almost a freak out, because I really need to get Clash of Kings read. So we'll work on that. And I hope that you are having a great reading month. Please leave me a comment. Let me know, what are you reading this month? What are you supposed to be reading this month that maybe you're not getting to because of whatever else, life getting in the way, or other books taking precedence for you and grabbing your attention. Please, if you have gotten through the whole video and you liked what you saw, please consider leaving me a like, consider subscribing. It's easy, free, doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps out my channel quite a lot. I currently am sitting at 68 people. If I just get one more sub, then I'm at a really fun number. So consider being that one sub if you really liked what you saw and you're willing to come back and want to know what else I'm going to be doing. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.